Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to the His Show. Stories written by a current prisoner, man. Before we dive into this interview, man, thank you. Thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart, ladies and gentlemen. Never once in my life did I ever think that this would happen. I never in my life, even when I started this, I never imagined, even in my wildest dreams, that I'd be capable of reaching something like 80,000 subscribers, man. So for those of you who have been supporting, man, since the very beginning, those of you who have just jumped on the bandwagon, those of you who are taking the time out every day to watch this show and keeping it alive, thank you so much, man. Sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I wish I could shake your hand. I wish I could have a drink with you, man. I wish I could talk to you as a person, man. Man, thank you, man. Sincerely, man. I hope, man, I do reach that 100,000 milestone, man, and get that plaque, man. I'll hang it up right here, man. But with that being said, man, let's go ahead and jump into this interview, man. This is an oldie but goodie. As I stated before, I will be uploading 2 videos a day. So there will be another video uploaded shortly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that being said, I do have that surprise for you. So be on the lookout. I'll probably be dropping tomorrow or the next day. And you know how I do it, man. It's a special surprise, man. So, yeah, man. Be on the lookout.
Where did they call you?
I would like to remain anonymous.
What are you incarcerated for, and how long is your sentence?
I'm incarcerated for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and my sentence is 25 to life plus a 4-year enhancement for hate crime.
Do you or did you belong to any type of gangs, groups, organizations?
I'm associated with a known prison gang, yeah.
Before you started getting involved with this group, or you started feeling yourself with this set, beforehand, growing up, did you hanging around with people of that nature already? Like, were you kind of hanging out with other people who were gang-related?
No, absolutely not. My stepfather was a cop in Compton, and my mom works for an attorney, and they're very straight-laced, don't smoke, don't drink, don't do drugs, all that.
So you seem to come from a very good background, a very good household. How was it that you got involved in this whole mess? Can you take it there from the very beginning, how this whole thing played out, and how is it that you caught this case?
That's kind of a long story. So my stepdad is black, and my mom is white, of course. And so, but he's been my dad since I was 3 years old. He raised me. And they had 2 children, my brother and my sister. And once they were born, there was a lot of favoritism shown towards them. And my older brother and I were kind of like kicked to the curb, basically brushed aside. And I felt that. All growing up, I felt it. And I was basically told that I was just a guest in that house and that I would be leaving. My dad told me that when I was 15, that I was just a guest and that I would be leaving. And I always felt unloved. I felt like I didn't belong. And I was very unhappy. And so I started doing anything I could to piss my parents off. Anything that I knew they didn't like, I did it. Because they didn't do drugs, I did them. Because their one rule was to go to school and get good grades, I ditched school and started screwing up. Even though I'm a good student, I'm very intelligent, I always got good grades up until then. I decided to leave home because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I felt like I didn't want them to tell me what to do because they didn't love me anyway. So I left. And my recreational drug use turned into an addiction. And I ended up pregnant on the streets doing drugs. I got clean for a little while when I was pregnant and I had my daughter. And my daughter ended up getting taken away when she was a year old. And I lost my apartment. I lost my job. I lost my schooling. And I had nothing. And they took my daughter. So I went back to the streets. Instead of doing what I was supposed to do and getting my daughter back and making good choices, I went back to the streets because it was easier and because nobody was fighting me on doing that. So I went back to my addiction. I went back to running the streets, and I met some people that I really thought had a sense of family, a sense of togetherness that I envied, and I wanted to join them. And I figured that the best way to get unconditional acceptance was to go to the extreme, do the one thing that I thought, they would never question. And so I met some white supremacists, and I asked them to help me earn my lightning bolts. And they agreed. And so that's what we did. I initiated the whole situation, and I made the decisions, and they went along with it. And that's exactly what we did. We went out and we picked up a man off the street that was just looking to score a hit, wanted to get high, and we took him out in the desert and I killed him. I took his life just to get some acceptance from people that I later learned didn't care one lick about me. They dropped me like a bad habit right after it happened and never looked back. And not only do I have to live with what I did, my parents had to live with what I did. My brother and my sister, who are half black, have to live with what I did. And that man's brother has to live with what I did. His mother died right after she found out I got arrested for his murder. And that was devastating to me, to know that. And at first I thought that maybe I would be able to get away with it because I'd been questioned about it before, because at one point I had been bragging about what I did because, drugs make you stupid. Drugs are just, they make you dumb. And you do a lot of dumb things when you're high. So I was bragging about it, and I got questioned about it, and I got out from underneath it one time. But I found out that this time was different because they knew everything and that I wasn't going anywhere and that I was facing the death penalty for what I did. Not once, but twice over. Because conspiracy to commit murder carries special circumstances, and a hate crime.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
The hate crime carries special circumstances. So that's two. And I had another decision to make. What do I do? Do I take it to trial? Getting tried for a hate crime in downtown LA? Not going to be a good idea. And sitting in jail day after day after day, sitting in ADSEG, locked in my cell 23 hours a day, I started to realize that I didn't like who I was, that I was ugly inside, and that the reason I was sitting there with nobody, none of my homeboys or my homegirls were writing to me. My family wasn't writing to me. I didn't have money on my books. I had nothing. And the reason I didn't have those things was because I didn't foster those kind of good relationships when I was out. I was selfish, and I was mean, and I made terrible choices. And so I ruined the relationships that I had, and the ones that I thought were solid were fake. So I didn't have any of that. And I remembered that my dad, when I was growing up, when I was real little, we used to go to church. And I remember sometimes catching my dad praying for us kids when he thought that nobody was in the house. And it really affected me. On a subconscious level, it affected me. And the Bible says, teach your children the way they should go, and when they're older, they will return to it. And that's what happened. I sought out the chaplain, and I started doing Bible studies, and I started really taking a look at myself, and I saw what kind of person I had become, and I didn't like it.
Going back to the night where the incident happened, you said you're in the middle of nowhere, you're in the desert. After the act is committed, what is going through your mind? What are you feeling? What is the thought process? How are your comrades acting? How are they taking it?
So after it happened, like I said before, I was just stunned. And I don't really remember much of what I thought because I was so high on the adrenaline on top, because I'd been up for a couple of days by then. So I'd been on a good one. And then the adrenaline on top of that, I was just like out of my head. We went back to their house and, washed our clothes, took showers and stuff like that, but I didn't sleep that night. I ended up leaving, and I went to a friend's house, and I went and cleaned my car. I went and washed it inside and out, made sure that there was nothing incriminating in my car, I guess you could say. I went and ditched the murder weapon in the aqueduct, and just went about my business like it never happened. And the terrible, awful thing about that is that that's what drugs do to you. Drugs numb you to where, I just didn't care about anything. And so I just went about my business. And it's hard for me to imagine now how I couldn't have been affected by it. And maybe like on a subconscious level I was, and I was so bogged down with all the drugs that I was doing that I didn't realize it until later. I didn't realize that it was as serious as it was until so where it happened wasn't that far away from a housing tract that there was a lady that used to take care of my daughter during the week for my mom, and her house was like not that far away from where it happened. And so I was out visiting at my mom's house one day, and she brought it up. She said, "Oh, did you hear they found a body over by so-and-so's house?" And I immediately felt sick, just sick to my stomach, and I started to panic inside and had to leave the room because I didn't want them to notice. And I thought, oh my God, like, not only are my parents talking about it, they have no idea that I did it, and I did it so close to somewhere where my daughter was at, and it dawned on me just like, not only how did I have the nerve to do something like that, but that how long is it going to be before I actually get caught for this? Are they ever going to know? And I had to shut it off, and I cut myself off, and I hardened myself so that I wouldn't give it away. And then I left my parents' house because I didn't want them to notice that there was something wrong. And so I went back to doing my drugs, back on the streets, and I stayed high, stayed running the streets for quite a few years, and just didn't give a second thought to any of the realities that, this isn't what life is really like. This is not how you live your life, running the streets and getting high and committing crimes and doing the things that you do. It's not how you live your life. But that's what I was doing. And that's why there's so many bad things that happened to me because of the choices that I was making. And I never stopped to realize that I was causing those things to happen to me by the choices I was making, and I always pointed my finger at somebody else, saying it was somebody else's fault when it was my fault, because I was the one causing a chain reaction, because what you put out is what you get back. If I'm putting out these ugly things are going to happen to me. So
what happened?
It was just... Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
Whatever ended up happening to those two guys that you started getting involved with? Like, how did they fall off? What happened there?
So right after this happened, I never really I hung out with them somewhat, especially the older brother. But after this happened, we were so high and so focused on other things. I went about my business in other directions, and he started hanging out with somebody that I didn't particularly care for because he was on drugs worse than we were. And because my co-defendant had just gotten out of prison, he wasn't used to doing the way we were, and he wasn't used to doing such large amounts. And I had told the guy that he started hanging out with, quit him high, quit doing that for him because he doesn't handle it well. And so they just went off on their own and ditched me and left me behind. And they started doing home invasions, and they got busted for it. So he ended up getting a good chunk of change and going upstate to Pelican Bay. So, and the younger brother, I never was really close to him, and I never really hung out with him much. So the sad thing about it is that even from the very beginning, my involvement with them and my relationship with them was very superficial. And because when you're on drugs and everything is intensified and you think that things are in ways that they're not, you glorify them and you think that they're really important, and they're really not. So I put more emphasis on the relationships than there actually was. So I wasn't important to them, they weren't really important to me, and it all just fell in the cracks.
Okay, that ended up falling out. Now, you mentioned to me that you actually were on the street and you were actually able to be free and get away with this for 5, 6, 7 years, you said?
Yeah, 7 years.
How did you get caught? How did this whole thing get caught? I'm pretty sure by that time you already thought in your head, hey, you know what, 5, 6, 7 years have already passed. I got away with this. I got away. And
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure you had a lot of nervous moments, psyching yourself out mentally. But how did you get caught? How did the whole situation happen that you got caught?
So the one co-defendant was already in state doing his time for his other crimes. His brother got busted for something and decided that he was going to give up this crime, give up the information that he knows about this crime in order to not only save himself, but also to do something good for his brother. And gave up my name, told him everything that happened. They both drew maps and pointed out where it happened. And I don't know where it's written, but there's even a statement somewhere that the cops said that this crime would have remained unsolved if they had never come forward. And my one co-defendant, he told me later on that he felt like he had to clear his conscience with God, and so he divulged all this information. And I don't know whether that's true or not, and I'm not going to disabuse him of his relationship with God. But it's a hard pill to swallow when something so heavy is just thrown out there and you're caught up. But in all actuality, I'm grateful that I got arrested for this. I'm grateful that I ended up doing all that time in county. And I'm grateful for the time that I've spent here in prison because it saved me from myself. And I think that if this hadn't happened, if I hadn't gotten busted, then I would be running the streets still. I would be tore up. I would just be a waste, or I would be dead. I would just be dead. And it's hard. It's hard not to be bitter about it unless you realize that everybody has to live their own life and do what they got to do. And I did what I did. So I'm going to take responsibility for what I did because I want to be a better person than that. I want to be the person that I always thought I was going to be instead of the person I became.
What went through your mind the moment that they presented the information to you, and you knew that you were formally being charged with a murder? What went through your head?
Oh, I flipped out. I completely flipped out. When he was first interviewing me, the detective, he started off talking about one thing, and then he merged it into this other story where he starts dropping little details about what happened. And it started to dawn on me, oh, crap, they know everything. And the more he tried to put it out there and get me to admit it, the more I denied it. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no clue. I don't know who that is. And I started getting irate. I started getting upset and crying and yelling. And I would never do something like that. You know, the same things we all do when we're busted for something and we just don't want to admit it. We lie. And that's what I did. I tried to lie my way out of it. And he wasn't having it. And I ended up screwing myself because when I got busted, I'd already been up for days. And they made me sit in a cell for days after that and then questioned me.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And by that time, I was really out of my head and coming down, so I wasn't thinking straight. And they got me to admit that I was there, even though I didn't actually say I was there. I made a statement. I said, I didn't see what happened. I didn't ask any questions.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So, you know, I did that to myself because of the choices that I make.
Leading up to them finally reading off that guilty verdict, how was your experience in LA County? You said that you were there for 11 years, and how did your co-defendants or your partners in this crime, how did they play into them finding you guilty?
So my co-defendants were only looking out for themselves. They decided they were both looking at a lot of time. One was already doing a lot of time. One was looking at a lot of time. And they decided that they wanted to make a deal. And they gave me up in order to make a better deal for themselves. And just threw me under the bus because they didn't care about me. They didn't care about what happened to me. And they will just use me the same way I used them. And I got busted, and I sat in that county jail in that cell 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 3,000 and some odd days of never going outside, of never hugging my loved ones, of living by myself or just with one other person, and not being able to work to have any money, or not being able to go to school, being told when I'm allowed to shower or when I can wash my clothes. You know, it's hard doing that kind of time in county. It's hard doing that kind of time anywhere, but being locked down like that, it's psychologically damaging. I ended up on psych meds for a little while for anxiety, and then I couldn't sleep, and then I was depressed, and just a whole plethora of things that affect your mind when something like that happens. And coming down off of drugs and getting sober and learning that, oh, crap, I'm an adult, and I don't have drugs, and I don't have family, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life and grow up. And it was a time where I believe that God was with me throughout my whole life, but I wasn't with him. And so he allowed me enough rope to hang myself because we have free will. And I ran around and did whatever I was doing, however long I was doing it. And then when I got busted, it's like he said, okay, that's enough. You had your turn, now it's my turn. And he drew me into him, and he made me better. And he showed me that I was loved and that he would take care of me, because as long as I was faithful and I was honest and I was just doing what I could to be better, God took care of me the entire time I was in county. And even when I faltered and I wasn't doing so well, I had God, and it's a different experience for everybody, experiencing God that way. But I can honestly say that he's the only person I can trust, without a doubt. He's not fallible. He's faithful. And I didn't want for anything. He gave me exactly what I needed. I didn't have a lot of wants. I didn't have all the extra food and all the soups and the zoom, wham, whams and all that stuff, but I had my coffee and I had my soap and my shampoo, and I could keep myself clean and drink a cup of coffee in the morning because God took care of me that way. And it really showed me that my life could be better. But it was a struggle not to resort to my old behaviors when somebody made me mad or they confronted me and wanted to fight. Not fighting back. It takes a lot of strength to do that, and it takes a lot of faith and a lot of desire to really be different, to not do that and to make better choices. And all that damage that I did to myself for so many years, it took all that 11 years to unravel that damage and actually turn it into good. So that time was not wasted, but that time was very hard.
Okay, finally getting rid of that.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
What was your experience like finally going to a women's prison? I'm pretty sure at this time you kind of already got the gist of being incarcerated, being locked down and whatnot. How was that transition like for you, actually going to a women's prison?
It was a culture shock, I'll say that. Going from being locked in a room by myself for so long to a space where you live with like 6 or 7 other people, and being in crowds, that was hard for me for a while. Being in the chow hall with the loud noise and all the people, and being locked in there and told you can't leave yet, and just all the little things that come with being in prison. It was very, very hard, and I ended up getting into the mental health program for a while just so that I could check in with them and use them as a sounding board to make sure that my thinking was right, because everything was distorted, because I learned how to be an adult in a prison cell in county jail, but I didn't know if I was on the right track or, is this the way it's supposed to be? So then I ended up here and around all these other people that are just as broken and messed up as I am and trying to be better. And I can't really judge by that. I can't go off of that. So I felt like I was like in a sea, lost by myself. It sounds like a cliche, but I was really at sea trying to figure out how to navigate this place. And it's a completely different world. It's dirty, it's dreary, it's drudgery, it's depressing, but it's what you make of it. And if you want it to be better and you make better choices, there are avenues here, there are options here that can help you. But you have to want to help. You have to want to be able to do better and take advantage of the things that they have here. But this is no way to live. And it's sad seeing some of the people that have been here for years and years and years and getting out, and how it's like going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons in a day. That's what it's like.
What are the procedures like in the women's prison? Do you guys politic? Like, as soon as you get there, is there someone telling you, hey, let me see your paperwork? What are you incarcerated for? Is there anybody hitting you up like that? Or like a group of, is there gangs like that? Or is it racially segregated where people approached you and asked you where you were from or who you were affiliated with or anything like that?
Me personally, no, because I just look like this nerdy white girl. You know what I mean? But if you're affiliated or you, like, people are aware that you're in county and you're coming up here, you know that there's people waiting for you sometimes, depending on the situation. I have never been hit up in that manner. But the women here don't politic like that. Not the white women, anyways. The white women don't politic.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So, but it's people still hit you up like, what kind of case do you have? What are you here for? And it's supposed to be taboo, but they do it anyway.
No, you were just saying something to me to the effect of time passing, people changing, and just losing loved ones and whatnot. Have you dealt with that? Have you gone through that?
I have. So I know I mentioned earlier that my family wasn't around when I was in county, and I did all that time, on my own. Since I've been in prison, I've regained a relationship with my daughter, but it's so distant. It's so removed, and you don't realize the damage that you did to yourself and to other people until you see that they've moved on with their lives and that they're not around anymore, that they don't care or they never did care, or that they don't know how to deal with the fact that you're gone and that you're not coming home for a really long time, and they move on with their lives. And you're left behind, and people die, and then it makes you wonder, where do I belong when I get out? Because they're not there anymore. My mom just died in June, and we had a lot of complicated things in our relationship, because of her parenting when I grew up. But I'm a different person now, and I never got the opportunity to really sit with my mom and talk about those things because she's gone. And it's really hard when you know that those people aren't there anymore.
How difficult is that? I mean, like right now, do you have a support system? Do you have people there for you?
I do have people that are very caring and people that do care, and the thing about prison is that you're in such close quarters that you can't help but get to know people. But for the most part, people don't care about anybody but themselves here anyway. And because we live so close together, you don't get the opportunity to grieve the way you need to. Like, most people go and they cry in the shower, but that's like, who cries at the drop of a hat? Can you time when you're going to go cry? I'm going to go cry in the shower right now. I'll be back. Nobody does that. So you don't get to grieve properly. You don't get to mourn for your lost loved ones. You just have to suck it up and keep moving. And it makes it hard. And people are supportive, but they're going through the same things, and it's not easy to be somebody else's shoulder when you need one yourself.
What are some of the messed up cases, or have you ran into other broken, quote unquote, broken women? Like, is there anybody out there that kind of sticks out to you where, like, wow, this woman has been through a lot?
So
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Some of the groups that they have here are very intense, and I just got through doing one that is like a board hearings preparation group, and we really dig deep, and we rely very heavily on discretion, and so we're free to divulge things that we don't normally tell other people. And it gave me a new respect for the commissioners on the parole board, because some of the things that people have done and the details, I can't imagine what their life was like and how hard it must be to live with the things that they've done every day. And for the commissioners to have to hear that stuff every single day and then go home and be with their families and act like everything is normal, unbelievable to me that there are so many women here that have been beaten, abused, on drugs all their lives, and had no help, didn't know how to be better, and here they are in prison, whether it's because they made bad choices and they ended up here, or because they didn't know how to get help and they ended up here because They had no recourse. And it's just so sad that there are so many women that the community doesn't understand or see how, if they had had help or if they could have just had somebody that could talk to them or show them a better way, they wouldn't be here. Because a lot of the women that are in prison, it's not that they're bad people, it's that they did bad things.
What is something that you can tell to somebody out there who's kind of maybe wanting to belong, who kind of maybe wants that family, who wants that loyalty, who kind of maybe perhaps is following down the same footsteps that you went down? What would you tell that individual?
So, first of all, one of the most valuable pieces of wisdom I ever got, my chaplain told me, and she said, do not expect more from a person than they are willing or able to give. And you have to understand that people only do what they can with what they're given. And I didn't realize that my mom was messed up and that she made a lot of bad choices, and it informed all the choices that I made in my life. Allow people to be human, but realize that it's okay to make mistakes, but be careful about the choices that you make, because you could ruin your whole life with one bad mistake because you think that this person cares about you and they don't. If you want good relationships and you want people to love you for who you are, then you have to give what you want back. And it's not going to always work out perfectly that way. People don't always give what you expect them to, but I guarantee you, if I was more loving and I was kinder and I nurtured good relationships, those relationships and that love would have come back to me in some form somewhere. But I didn't, and so I ended up alone in prison. And it's okay to be broken. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. But it's what you do with those things that makes the difference in whether or not you your life. Pardon my language. It's just, you have to be careful of the choices that you make if you want your life to be good.
Is there anything else that you would like to address or anything else that you would like to say?
You can't expect anybody else to love you or accept you if you're not okay with yourself. People are only gonna give you what you put out. And I'm a firm believer in education, and the more educated you are, the more you learn, the more you're willing to work hard for what you want in life, the more you're going to get out of it. You can't expect everything to be handed to you, and you can't blame everybody else for all the bad things that are happening in your life, because if bad things are happening, change it. Make it better. It's possible to do whatever you want to do in order to make it better, but you have to want it for yourself. You can't expect somebody else to do it.